Okay. Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are here in this video. We're talking about apparently something called the Project 2025, which basically, from what I understand, aims to radically change the government if they can win the presidency. They're so, angry over the fact they got defeated last time and struggled in 2022. There was no red wave, but a trickle. Yeah. But here's a story from WBUR in Boston. Let's go ahead and check into this. As Congress gets back to work this week, a few blocks away, the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, has been working on Project 2025. The plan aims to dramatically reshape federal agencies, reduce their independence, and give more power to the president. They are working to assemble an army of aligned, vetted, trained, and prepared conservatives to go to work on day one. If a Republican wins the presidency, to deconstruct the administrative state. So essentially, let's put our own yes men in and take away any pushback power. Here and Now's Robin Young speaks with Paul Dans, the director of Project 2025 at the Heritage Foundation. He was also chief of staff at the Office of Personnel Management in the Trump administration. And host Deepa Fernandez talks with Lisa Mascaro, Associated Press chief congressional correspondent, about Project 2025. But yeah. So we get a little look on what it is. Now, this will give us a little more information. This is from Medium. An independence guide to Heritage Foundation's 2025 Presidential Transition Project. Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. The Mandate for Leadership project was initiated by the Heritage Foundation in the early part of 1979 as an effort to combat what many conservatives perceived as systemic dysfunction in Washington. By 1981, the project had compiled a 20-volume, 3,000-page governing handbook containing more than 2,000 conservative policies intended to reform the federal government and rescue the American people from what its contributors considered excessive progressivism in government. I would rather have progressivism because it's about what? Progress, which is moving forward. Their mandate for leadership, the Conservative Promise, has now been updated as part of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project. It lays out policy recommendations from a conservative perspective for various government agencies and public agenda issues. It advocates for limited government, strengthening national defense, controlling immigration, promoting traditional values, and deregulation. You know, the crap that's kind of got us in this fucking shit fuck in the first place. Anyway, Okay, before I go any further, let me state for the record that I am registered as an independent. I have no particular loyalty to any political party. I find that I agree with positions and policies on both sides of the aisle and sometimes disagree with both sides on some issues. Having said that, I will note that this document is very critical of the Biden administration and advocates reversing many of its policies, as I would expect from a document of conservative authorship. It also argues that the federal bureaucracy and administrative state have become too large and unaccountable. On social issues, it advocates for restrictions on abortion, eliminating government efforts to promote LGBTQ rights, banning pornography, and opposing transgender health care for minors. Where are we starting? On foreign policy, it argues for increased confrontation with China and efforts to promote U.S. interests abroad. Overall, the document promotes a vision of society grounded in traditional conservatism and nationalism. The merits and downsides of its various proposals could be debated extensively from different political and philosophical standpoints. A full analysis would require weighing the intended and potential consequences of each policy recommendation and considering their costs, risks, and morality. Lacking a staff of lawyers, policymakers, and advisors, I decided to use AI to help me analyze the arguments being presented in support of the policy recommendations being made by the various authors. My method was simple, yet, I believe, quite effective in answering the burning questions that kept popping into my mind as I read this lengthy document. Namely, how might this argument be viewed through a nonpartisan lens? Is it rational? Is it fair? Does it align with generally accepted small d democratic principles? I can tell you that from the fucking top. No! It does fucking not. But anyway, as far as I'm concerned, these 4 questions are the most important. If an argument is irrational or unfair, it is a non-starter. And if it doesn't align with generally accepted small d democratic principles as opposed to the specific platform of the Democratic Party, which don't necessarily coincide, then as far as I'm concerned, it's a step in the wrong direction toward autocracy. That's what the fucking Republicans want. This guy's, he may say, oh, I'm independent. He's on the right side of the fucking political alignment. God damn, I hate fucking America sometimes. There's so many stupid fucks. Anyway. Finally, I seek to understand the arguments through a nonpartisan lens, so I can judge them on their individual merits. Just not a party guy anymore, I guess. So, as my best attempt to accomplish this, I let my favorite LLM, Claude 2 100K by Anthropic AI, read each section of the document and comment as it saw fit. Then I requested the following from the AI. Please analyze the rationality, fairness, and alignment with generally accepted small d democratic principles of this piece from a nonpartisan perspective. Here are the results and the AI's analysis of mandated leadership. Promise to America. Here are a few key points I've gathered from the excerpt. The excerpt comes from a foreword of a book called Mandate of Leadership, The Conservative Promise, published by the Heritage Foundation as part of their 2025 presidential transition project. The forward frames the current moment as one of crisis for America and of conservative movement, similar to the late 1970s. It argues conservatism needs to unify around a bold agenda and courageous leadership like it did with Reagan in the 1980s in order to save the republic. It outlines 4 key promises or priorities. Restore the traditional family as the centerpiece of American life. Dismantle the administrative state and return power to the people. Defend American sovereignty and interest against global threats like China. Secure individual liberties against encroachment by the woke left. Oh, here we go. The bullshit starts. Oh, it's only going to get more full of bullshit. The excerpt sharply criticizes progressive elites, corporate power, globalization, and various social and economic policies from the left. It advocates aggressive conservative policies on the family, deregulation, immigration, China, energy production, free speech, and more. Overall, it promotes a very combative, urgent vision for the next conservative presidency centered on opposing the ruling class and progressive ideology. The tone is one of a crisis and impending loss of the very idea of America if conservatives fail to take bold action. Please analyze the rationality from a nonpartisan perspective. From a nonpartisan perspective, I would make a few observations about this excerpt. This is so stupid, asking an AI, which, God damn it. Anyway, it relies heavily on portraying politics as a battlefield of good and evil, framing progressive as betrayers of America seeking to accumulate power. This good versus evil framing tends to oversimplify complex policy disagreements. The language is very combative and urgent, warning of dire threats to the country's survival. This extremist tone undermines the reasoned debate and democratic compromise. There are assumptions stated as self-evident facts without evidence, like claims about the left's beliefs or goals. Asserting motives without proof reduces accuracy. Well, he actually seems fairly honest, the AI. Policy critiques attack generalized groups like elites or globalists instead of specific policies which converge on scapegoating. Specificity aids constructive policy evaluation. Proposed conservative policies are given with little analysis of potential drawbacks or counter-arguments. One-sided presentations risk bias. There are appeals to tradition and the past without wrestling with changing conditions in the present. Static appeals risk resistance to necessary societal evolution. Thank you for pointing this out. They want to take us back to the goddamn 1950s. And guess what? It was not a great time for every fucking body. I don't understand how you could be a right-winger in America. Do you just lick the asshole of Hitler and go, it tastes so goddamn good, I want to be a far right-winger? Dumb-ass motherfuckers. Democratic principles depend on inclusive civic participation. You know, like how they want to push against voting rights. Yeah. Reasoned pluralism. That means it's something that all can kind of agree on, and promoting the common good. The excerpt's vision seems partisan, fearful of diversity, and aimed at defeating opponents rather than understanding them. Thank you, my God. I was so worried because they had an AI that it was going to be such stupid shit, but he's actually telling the truth. Overall, this excerpt has a fairly limited style of political rhetoric that divides Americans into opposing camps and leaves little room for nuance, factual analysis, or democratic cooperation across differences. A more constructive vision would ground policy arguments in evidence, acknowledge complex trade-offs, and allow all citizens an equal voice in charting America's future. But you hear before, it's like, we want deregulation. Motherfucker, deregulation is part of why America's in this shit pit. Because you fuckers were like, nah, we don't need regulation. You lose a few fingers, you're fine. You can still work. The fuck is wrong with you? Fuckers like that who think like that need their asses kicked. Section 1. Taking the reins of government. Clause 2. 100K. Here are a few key points I gathered from the excerpt of Mandate for Leadership. It outlines competing... Quit doing that shit. It outlines competing visions for America's future. Woke revolutionaries who want to fundamentally transform the country versus Americanists who believe in America's founding principles and want to fight for the country's soul. It argues the federal bureaucracy often pursues its own agenda rather than the president's, posing a problem for Republican governance. It advocates appointing officials who will limit and direct the bureaucracy on behalf of the American people and enforce the Constitution and rule of law. Motherfuckers, 14th Amendment is part of the Constitution, and you're willing to bypass it altogether just to get your favorite little bouncing boy into fucking office again. Don't sit there and act like we want to enforce the Constitution, except for the fact things that can push out our chosen God. It warns against executive overreach and unilateral action by presidents, saying legislatures should make the laws in a republic. Yeah, that's the way the Constitution has it. But guess what? Both of the goddamn parties have abused executive power and executive overreach. But they don't think about it on themselves. You can already tell by how they've written it and how it's being examined that they are very fucking partisan. It calls for deconstructing the centralized administrative state and empowering political appointees who are accountable to the president and can achieve his/her agenda. Well, you try to do that and then you cry, oh, this is overreach. And you try to defund their groups. EPA, what was the one that took a lot of money from the rich to help and tried to help the poor and help cover them? I can't remember the name of it. Liz Warren started. It ended up being because it was one of her main things. I can't remember the name of the organization. But basically, Republicans depowered it and turned it into a whipping stick for rich. So they can beat the crap out of the poor and not have to deal with pushback. In essence, it lays out a conservative vision for reining in the bureaucracy, respecting the Constitution's separation of powers, and ensuring the executive branch serves the American people rather than pursuing its own interests. The main goal is scaling back centralized control in favor of the founder's system of checks and balances. But yet, when you get your people in office, you don't care about the goddamn system of checks and balances. Yes, Master President, do things to make our power higher and make us richer, and fuck those who have left-wing ideas. That's essentially what goddamn happens. Please analyze the rationality, fairness, and alignment of the generally accepted small d principles of the piece of nonpartisan perspective. From a nonpartisan perspective, I see both strengths and weaknesses in the arguments made in this excerpt. On the positive side, the author rightly values American founding principles and the constitutional system of checks and balances. The concerns raised about potential overreach by the executive branch and unelected bureaucrats are valid ones in any administration. Thank you for saying that, because, Republicans tend to forget. You're persecuted. We're doing the goddamn law. We're following the goddamn law, and you fucks whine about it, yet when you get in power, you are some of the biggest assholes. Take away rights. Hurt Americans. You don't give a goddamn about the American people. Unless they've got their millions, then they're like, oh, yeah, well, we'll talk to you. Calls for transparency, accountability to voters, and respect for the rule of law are certainly consistent with democratic governance. However, there also seem to be some tensions with core democratic principles. The dismissive language about woke revolutionaries undermines reasoned, pluralistic debate. In a democracy, dissenting voices deserve engaged discussion rather than ridicule. There are hints of anti-intellectualism in the critique of experts and elites. Expertise and experience are not antithetical to democracy. They can inform it. Thank you, God damn it. The notion that real Americans inherently oppose things like public health measures is itself arguable. Shared values don't preclude differing policy views. Asserting the bureaucracy pursues its own agenda while the president pursues the people's assumes facts, not in evidence. Reality is often more complex. Yes, that is how it is. That is life. That is government. That is everything. It's not just this happened with this, thus it is the cause. No, motherfucker. The faith in political appointees being accountable to voters is debatable given low transparency and civic education today. Like I said, they're trying to take away voting rights. The education system's being squished in all directions to take away its ability to provide a very full and balanced education to people. But that's not what the right wing cares about. Nah,
They just want to make sure their voters are the ones who are empowered and take away voting rights from everybody else. That is exactly how they fucking act. Overall, reasonable concerns about balance of powers are raised, but couched in language and arguments that seem to divide Americas into us versus them camps, undervalue expertise, and oversimplify complex policy dynamics. A more nuanced, inclusive, evidence-based analysis could strengthen the democratic spirit of the piece. Yeah, this is definitely getting to be a good article. I'm agreeing with the AI more and more. Anyway, I don't have time to read all this because it is a hell of a long article. They break down quite a bit. Yeah, as you can see, we only read to there, and the end of the article's down here. So it's a hell of a long article. Anyway, let's look at what Wikipedia says about Project 2025. Project 2025 is a plan to reshape the U.S. federal government in the event of a Republican victory in 2024 U.S. presidential election. That alone right there should make you pause and go, why does it need to be a Republican victory? Are you so fucking sure that what you want passed would not be accepted by the Democrats that you don't even try to work with them anymore? Yeah, that's exactly what you believe. The plan seeks to recruit thousands to come to Washington, D.C., and to restructure the federal government in service of Trumpism, the personal ideology of Donald Trump. The plan would perform a rapid takeover of the entire U.S. federal government under a maximalist version of the unitary executive theory, a theory proposing the president that holds a very different view from the article we were reading. Now, it's not to say either one is wrong, but there seems to be some push. But like I said, yeah, they don't actually care about what they proclaim they care about. That's the way it's always been. It really fucking has. Go back and examine history. But I don't like to examine things. Go back and examine your history, not the bullshit of Fox News, One America News, Newsmax, Dinesh D'Souza, Crowder, Shapiro, fucking any of these other idiots. Do your research. Use multiple sources. Because, like I said, right here, you can see there's a bit of a difference between the Medium article as far as its tone and the Wikipedia article. Now, yes, I can see it be set up for unitary executive theory, but it is too it's not propaganda, but too tonally,
pro-Trump, keep him in office. While I'm sure there are a lot that want that, there's also a lot that's just like, we feel this is what needs to be done. So you can't honestly say it like that. But anyway, I'll go ahead and end this episode here. It's already been about a half hour. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting these links in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.